A cold suitcase washes up on the shores of Maine, hiding a dark secret that reveals a complex web of crime. What happened to Sarah's daughters on that fateful cruise? Each clue draws you deeper into a breathtaking mystery that will not let go. Will Sarah find her missing daughter before it's too late? This story, though fictional, is inspired by real cases to be both educational and entertaining. Stay tuned until the end for the twists and turns. Like, subscribe, comment, and share to join our community and keep the story exciting. Don't miss out on what happens next. Comment below where you're watching the video so we can get started. The fog hung heavy over Bar Harbor, Maine, swallowing the coastline in a gray shroud that muffled the crash of waves against the rocky shore. The air was sharp with salt, and the bite of an October morning, the kind of cold that seeped into your bones and stayed there. Tom Brennan trudged along the beach, his boots sinking into the damp sand, his breath puffing out in white clouds. A fisherman for 30 years, he knew every inch of this stretch of coast, from the jagged rocks to the driftwood that washed up after storms. But today, something felt off. The gulls were too quiet, their usual squawking replaced by an eerie silence. He tightened his grip on the thermos of coffee in his hand, scanning the shoreline for anything unusual. Then he saw a suitcase, half buried in the sand, its faded blue fabric warped by months in the ocean. It wasn't the usual debris, no tangled fishing net or broken buoy. This was different, heavier, like it carried a secret the sea couldn't keep. Tom's stomach twisted as he approached, the wind howling through the pines behind him. The suitcase was medium-sized, square, its zipper rusted and caked with salt. He crouched down, his calloused fingers brushing the cold, gritty surface. A faint, rancid smell hit him, like something rotting under the sun. His heart thudded. He shouldn't open it. He knew that. But curiosity, that old fisherman's instinct, pulled harder than caution. With a shaky hand, he unzipped the suitcase, just an inch at first. The stench hit him full force, making his eyes water. He gagged, stumbling back, but not before he saw a small, bloated shape wrapped in a faded red Mickey Mouse t-shirt. A child. A child in a suitcase. His coffee thermos slipped from his hand, splashing into the sand. "Jesus Christ," he whispered, his voice swallowed by the wind. Beside the body, a pair of blue swim goggles glinted faintly, the letter imaged on the side, barely visible under the grime. Tom scrambled for his phone, his fingers fumbling as he dialed 911. "This is Tom Brennan," he stammered when the operator answered. "I'm on the beach, near Suitcase Point. I found a suitcase. There's a kid inside. A dead kid. You gotta send someone now." "Stay where you are, sir," the operator said, her voice calm but urgent. "Officers are on their way. Don't touch anything." Tom nodded, though she couldn't see him, his eyes locked on the suitcase. The fog seemed to thicken, curling around him like a living thing. He backed away, his boots crunching on the sand, but he couldn't tear his gaze from the horrible discovery. Who would do this? Who would stuff a child into a suitcase and let the ocean carry her away? 10 minutes later, the beach was a hive of activity. Red and blue lights pierced the fog as police cruisers rolled up the access road. Officers and Navy windbreakers cordoned off the area with yellow tape, their radios crackling with static. A young officer, Lena Martinez, knelt beside the suitcase, her face pale but composed. She'd seen plenty in her 5 years on the force, but nothing like this. The child's body was badly decomposed, the skin discolored and sagging, but the Mickey Mouse t-shirt and goggles were unmistakable markers. This wasn't an accident. This was a crime scene. "Careful." Lena barked as a rookie officer got too close. "We need this pristine for forensics." She glanced at Tom, who stood a few yards away, his hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. "You okay, Tom?" "No," he said, his voice rough. "I ain't never seen nothing like this, Lena. Who does this to a kid?" "We're gonna find out," she said, her jaw tight. She turned back to the suitcase, her gloved hands carefully cataloging the contents. Besides the body, there was something else, a silver Zippo lighter, tarnished by seawater, but still intact. She held it up to the dim light, squinting at the engraving, V.H. "This doesn't belong to a kid," she muttered, slipping it into an evidence bag. Her eyes caught a faded price sticker on the suitcase's bottom, partially peeled but still legible. Keller's Corner News, Bangor, Maine. "Lieutenant," Lena called, waving over her supervisor, Lieutenant Dan Carver. "We've got something." A lighter with initials and a store tag on the suitcase. Carver, a grizzled man with 20 years on the force, took the evidence bag and frowned. "Keller's Corner? That's a newsstand, not a luggage shop. And this lighter looks custom. Bag it and tag it. We'll run it through the system." As the forensic team arrived, their white van kicking up gravel on the access road, Lena's radio crackled. "Martinez, we've got a possible ID on the victim," the dispatcher said. "Matches a missing persons case from 10 months ago. Twin girls disappeared on a cruise ship out of Boston. One of them was wearing a Mickey Mouse shirt." Lena's stomach dropped. "Twins? You're saying there's another kid out there?" "Maybe," the dispatcher said. "We're contacting the mother now. Detective Harper's on it." Halfway across the state, in a small apartment in Portland, Maine, Sarah Coleman sat in her darkened living room, the glow of a single lamp casting shadows across the walls. The place was a shrine to her missing daughters, Molly and Emma. Missing persons flyers littered the coffee table, their edges curled from months of handling. Photos of the 8-year-old twins smiled back at her bright eyes, gap-toothed grins, their blonde hair tied in matching ponytails. Sarah hadn't touched the blinds in weeks, letting the sunlight fade the flyers to ghosts of themselves. On her desk, stacks of police reports teetered precariously, each one read so many times she could recite them by heart. A pile of unopened sympathy cards sat on a side table, their pastel envelopes a cruel reminder of what everyone else assumed. Her girls were gone forever. Sarah rubbed her bloodshot eyes, setting down the case file. She'd been rereading the one from the 4th day of their cruise vacation, when Molly and Emma vanished without a trace. She'd worked overtime at her job as a bookstore clerk to afford that trip, a chance to make memories with her girls. Now, those memories were all she had left. Her fingers grazed the top sympathy card, hesitating. Maybe today she'd open one. Maybe today she'd let herself feel the loss everyone else had already accepted. Her phone buzzed, shattering the silence. The screen read, "Detective Jack Harper." Her heart lurched. She answered on the first ring. "Jack, what's happening?" Her voice was raw, clinging to a thread of hope she couldn't let go. Jack's tone was tight, like he was holding back a storm. "Sarah, I need you to brace yourself. We got a call from Bar Harbor PD. They found a suitcase on the beach. There's remains inside. We think it might be Molly." The world tilted. Sarah's hand gripped the phone so hard her knuckles whitened. "What?" The word was a whisper, barely audible. "I can't explain everything now," Jack said. "We're flying you to Bar Harbor. The suitcase has personal items we need you to identify. I'm coming to get you in 1 hour." 1 hour, Sarah repeated, her voice hollow. She was already moving, stumbling toward her bedroom on unsteady legs. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't notice. Her mind spun with memories of the cruise, laughing with her girls by the pool, their squeals as they splashed in the water, the moment she stepped outside the ship's restaurant to take a work call. 5 minutes. She'd left them for 5 minutes. When she returned, they were gone. She packed a small bag mechanically, shoving in a sweater, jeans, and a photo of Molly and Emma. The restaurant had been nearly empty that afternoon, just past 3:30, with only a skeleton crew of staff. She'd asked a waitress to keep an eye on the girls, but when she came back, the waitress said they'd wandered off. The ship's security had searched every inch: cabins, pools, kids' clubs, even locked storage rooms. Nothing. Security footage showed the twins watching a poolside magic show, giggling as a performer pulled cards from thin air. But when the crowd dispersed, they were gone. Hours of CCTV footage revealed no trace, no clue, no hope. The Coast Guard and FBI had gotten involved, locking down the ship at its next port in Key West. Every passenger was interviewed, every ID checked. Some whispered the girls had fallen overboard. Others said they were taken at a port. The cruise line swore their security was airtight, but 2 8-year-old girls didn't just vanish. Sarah had spent 10 months chasing dead ends, her life unraveling with every unanswered question. A sharp knock at the door snapped her back to the present. She grabbed her bag and opened the door to find Jack Harper, his face etched with exhaustion, but steady as always. "You ready?" he asked, his voice soft but firm. Sarah nodded, locking the door behind her. "Let's go." The flight to Bar Harbor was a blur of silence, the small plane rattling through the foggy night. Sarah stared out the window, watching the lights of Portland fade into the darkness. Jack sat beside her, flipping through case notes on his tablet, occasionally glancing her way. She barely noticed. Her mind was stuck on Molly, her goofy laugh, the way she'd insist on matching outfits with Emma. And Emma, where was she? If Molly was gone, was Emma still out there, waiting for her? They landed at a small regional airport, where a local officer met them and drove them to a brick sheriff's substation on the edge of town. Pine trees loomed around the building, swaying in the coastal breeze. The air inside was cold, sterile, the fluorescent lights buzzing like angry wasps. Jack led Sarah through a maze of corridors to a back room where the evidence waited. "Prepare yourself," Jack said, stopping her with a hand on her arm. "This won't be easy." Sarah nodded, her throat too tight to speak. They were handed masks and sterile gowns before entering the examination room. Inside, a weathered man in his 50s stood talking to an officer, his hands rough and tan from years at sea. The sheriff introduced him. "Mrs. Coleman, this is Tom Brennan, the fisherman who found the suitcase." Tom stepped forward, his eyes heavy with sympathy. "I'm so sorry, ma'am," he said, his voice gravelly. "I wish I'd found something else out there." Sarah managed a nod, her gaze drawn to the center of the room. On a stainless steel table sat the suitcase, faded, warped, its blue fabric grayed by the ocean's wrath. A medical examiner stood nearby, waiting for her signal. "Mrs. Coleman," he said, "we've documented everything as it was found. I'll show you the contents now." Sarah braced herself, gripping the edge of a counter as the examiner lifted the lid. She gasped, tears flooding her eyes. Inside lay the decomposed remains of a small child, wrapped in that familiar Mickey Mouse t-shirt. The body was bloated, partially skeletonized, but the shirt and the blue goggles with the M were unmistakable. "That's Molly's," Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. "I bought those goggles for her. They had matching sets, M for Molly, E for Emma." The examiner nodded. "We'd like your permission for a DNA sample to confirm, but based on these items." "Yes," Sarah said, her voice numb. "Do it." Jack placed a hand on her shoulder, as the examiner showed her a separate evidence bag. "There was something else," he said. "Something that doesn't fit." Inside was the Zippo lighter, its silver surface tarnished but intact, the initials VH glinting under the lights. "That's not hers," Sarah said, studying it through the plastic. "They were 8. They didn't own lighters." "It's a lead," Jack said, his eyes narrowing. "Something the killer left behind." Sarah turned to Tom. "How did you find it?" "Exactly?" Tom shifted, uncomfortable. "I was walking the beach, like I do every morning. Saw it in the sand, half buried. The smell, it was bad. I opened it just enough to see inside, and called the cops right away." "Was there anything else?" Sarah asked, desperation creeping into her voice. "Anything that could be Emma's?" Tom shook his head. "Just the suitcase, ma'am. I'm sorry." Sarah's eyes flicked back to the lighter, then to the suitcase. A faded price sticker caught her attention. Keller's Corner News, Bangor. Her heart skipped. "I've seen that logo before," she said, her voice trembling. "There's a newsstand in Portland with the same design." Jack's expression sharpened. "We'll check it out. That's our first solid lead." The sheriff chimed in. "This suitcase is an older model, not common anymore. We'll trace where it was sold. The lighter, too. That store logo might point us somewhere." Sarah pulled out her phone, snapping photos of the sticker and lighter. "Can I keep these?" she asked. "We'll send you digital copies," the sheriff said. "Everything's documented." As Jack coordinated with the local team, Sarah's mind raced. Why a suitcase? Why not something that would sink? She turned to the sheriff. You said it floated. Why would someone want it to be found? Good question, the sheriff said. This material gets buoyant when submerged. If they didn't weigh it down, it was bound to wash up eventually. Jack rejoined them, his face grim. We're reclassifying this as a homicide. We'll re-interview the cruise line staff, pull all the footage again, and map the ship's route against ocean currents to pinpoint where it was dumped. Sarah nodded, her resolve hardening. I want to see the beach where it was found. Jack hesitated. You sure? I need to, she said, her voice fierce. If I'm going to find Emma, I need to stand where Molly was. Tom spoke up. I can take you. My boat's docked nearby. Some of the investigation team's still there. Thank you, Sarah said, her voice softening. The boat ride to Suitcase Point took just under an hour, the water choppy and the fog relentless. Sarah sat at the bow, the salt spray stinging her face. Jack sat beside her, making calls to his precinct, while Tom steered with a steady hand. It's just ahead. Tom called over the engine's roar, pointing to a stretch of shoreline. As they approached, Sarah saw the yellow tape fluttering in the wind, a small crowd of officers moving methodically across the sand. A news van idled on the access road, a reporter and cameraman keeping their distance. Tom docked the boat, and Sarah stepped onto the weathered wooden planks, her legs unsteady. The sand was cold beneath her shoes as she followed Tom to the cordon-off area. This is it, Tom said, stopping at a shallow depression in the sand. The tide was going out, and it was just there. Sarah crouched, her fingers sifting through the damp grains. There has to be more, she whispered. Something to tell me where Emma is. Jack knelt beside her. The team's been thorough, Sarah. This is a big break after 10 months. We'll find her. A few feet away, the reporter noticed them and started talking urgently to her cameraman. Jack stood, his jaw tight. I'll handle the press. Take a moment here. As Jack walked off, Tom stayed with Sarah. There's a cabin resort nearby, he said after a quiet moment. Good place to stay tonight. The owner's over there. He nodded toward a middle-aged man beyond the tape. Sarah wiped her eyes and stood. I'd like that. I'm not ready to leave yet. I get it, Tom said. When my boy went missing in a boating accident 5 years back, I couldn't leave the harbor for weeks. You need to be close. Sarah looked at him, a flicker of understanding passing between them. Did you ever find him? Tom shook his head. The sea keeps its secrets, but I know where to go when I need to feel him. Jack returned, his face grim. The press is handled. Sarah, if you're staying, I'm assigning Lena to you for protection. We don't know what we're dealing with yet. Sarah nodded, her eyes drifting back to the depression in the sand. Somewhere out there, Emma was waiting, and Sarah would tear the world apart to find her. Sarah Coleman sat on the edge of a creaky wooden chair in a small cabin at the Seaside Haven Resort, just a mile from the beach where Molly's body had washed up. The air smelled of salt and pine, and the distant crash of waves against the rocky Bar Harbor shore was a relentless reminder of the ocean's cruelty. Outside, the fog clung to the coastline, turning the world beyond her porch into a gray haze. The cabin was simple, a single room with a queen bed, a tiny kitchenette, and a bathroom that hummed with an old fluorescent bulb. 2 Adirondack chairs faced the sea, their paint chipped from years of salt spray. Sarah hadn't touched the bed. Sleep was a stranger now, chased away by the image of Molly's decomposed body in that suitcase. The faded Mickey Mouse t-shirt burned into her mind. She clutched a framed photo of her twin daughters, Molly and Emma, their 8-year-old faces beaming under the summer sun. Their blonde ponytails swung as they laughed, arms slung around each other's shoulders. Sarah's thumb traced the edge of the frame, her chest tight with grief and a stubborn flicker of hope. Molly was gone, but Emma might still be out there. The thought was a lifeline, thin and fraying, but she gripped it with everything she had. Her eyes drifted to the coffee mug on the table, a welcome drink from a young waitress who'd offered it with a pitying smile. The coffee had gone cold, untouched, like everything else in her life. The cabin's thin walls did little to muffle the sound of the wind howling outside, carrying with it memories of 10 months ago. Sarah closed her eyes, and the world shifted. She was back on the cruise ship, the Ocean Majesty, sailing out of Boston. The air had been warm, thick with the promise of adventure. Molly and Emma had begged to spend every waking moment by the pool, their giggles echoing as they splashed in the shallow end. Sarah had scrimped for a year at her bookstore job in Portland to afford that trip, a chance to give her girls a memory they'd carry forever. She could still see them in their matching red swimsuits, Molly's with an M on her goggles, Emma's with an E. They'd been inseparable, two halves of the same heart. It was the fourth day of the cruise, docked briefly in Key West, when everything shattered. Sarah had taken the girls to the ship's seaside grill for a late lunch, a quiet spot with checkered tablecloths and a view of the ocean. The place was nearly empty, just a handful of passengers lingering over their meals. She'd left them at the table, their plates piled with fries, to take a call from her boss outside where the signal was stronger. 5 minutes, she'd told the waitress, a young woman with a bored smile. Just keep an eye on them. The call had dragged on some nonsense about inventory, and when Sarah returned, the table was empty. The waitress shrugged. They said they were going to the arcade, she'd muttered, barely looking up from her phone. Panic had clawed at Sarah's chest as she tore through the ship, shouting their names. The arcade was empty. The pool was deserted. The kids' club staff hadn't seen them. The ship's security team launched a search, their radios crackling as they swept every deck, every cabin, every storage closet. They checked locked rooms, unassigned staterooms, even the engine compartments. Nothing. A shipwide alert went out, passengers confined to their cabins as the crew combed the vessel. Security footage showed Molly and Emma at a poolside magic show, clapping as a performer in a sparkly cape pulled cards from thin air. The crowd was thick, families jostling for a better view. When the show ended and the crowd thinned, the girls were gone, swallowed by the chaos. Sarah had stood on the deck that night, her hands gripping the railing, screaming their names into the wind. The ship's captain assured her they'd done everything possible. The Coast Guard was notified, the FBI brought in. Every passenger was interviewed, Idahos checked, backgrounds scrutinized. Some whispered, the girls had fallen overboard, their small bodies lost to the waves. Others muttered about human trafficking, kids snatched at a port. The cruise line swore their security was flawless, but the truth was stark. 2 8-year-old girls had vanished without a trace. Back in the cabin, Sarah's eyes snapped open, the memory fading like a bad dream. The photo in her hands trembled slightly. She set it down, her fingers brushing against a crumpled flyer on the table. Missing, Molly and Emma Coleman. Last seen on the Ocean Majesty. Contact Portland PD. Asterisk. The words blurred as tears welled up. She wiped them away, forcing herself to focus. The suitcase, the lighter, the price sticker from Keller's Corner News, those were leads, real leads after 10 months of nothing. She couldn't give up now. A knock at the door jolted her. She opened it to find Detective Jack Harper, his coat damp from the fog, his face etched with the same exhaustion she felt. Officer Lena Martinez stood beside him, her dark eyes scanning the porch like she expected trouble to materialize from the mist. "Morning, Sarah," Jack said, his voice steady but heavy. "You holding up?" "Barely," Sarah admitted, stepping aside to let them in. "Any news on Emma?" Jack hesitated, glancing at Lena. "We're still processing the suitcase. The material, it's buoyant, Sarah. Whoever did this didn't weigh it down properly. It was meant to float, maybe even to be found." Sarah's breath caught. "You're saying they wanted us to find Molly?" "Maybe," Lena said, her voice clipped. "Could be a taunt, or just sloppy work. Either way, it's a lead." Sarah's mind raced. A taunt? The thought made her skin crawl, the idea of someone playing a sick game with her daughter's body. She gestured to the photo on the table. "I keep thinking about that day on the ship, if I hadn't taken that call." "Don't," Jack said, his tone firm but kind. "You can't carry that, Sarah. Those ships are floating cities, thousands of people, hundreds of blind spots. Even good parents lose sight of their kids sometimes." Sarah shook her head, her voice breaking. 5 minutes, Jack. I left them for 5 minutes." Lena stepped closer, her expression softening. Listen, Sarah, I've seen cases like this. Predators, they watch, they wait, they know exactly when to strike. This wasn't your fault. Sarah nodded, but the guilt was a stone in her chest, heavy and unyielding. She forced herself to focus. What about the lighter? The one with VH on it? We're running it, Jack said. Custom engraving, not mass-produced. The price sticker from Keller's Corner News is our best bet right now. It's a newsstand in Bangor, maybe 60 miles from here. We'll head there today. Before Sarah could respond, another knock came, softer this time. A woman stood in the doorway, her auburn hair pulled back in a messy bun, a notepad tucked under her arm. She was in her late 30s, with sharp green eyes that seemed to see too much. Jack, she said, nodding to him before turning to Sarah. Mrs. Coleman, I'm Ellen Harper, Jack's sister. I'm a reporter, but I'm here off the record. Sarah's guard went up. I don't talk to the press. I'm not here for a story, Ellen said quickly. I've been tracking cases like yours for years, kids going missing on cruise ships. There's a pattern, Sarah. I think what happened to Molly and Emma is part of something bigger. Sarah's heart thudded. Bigger how? Ellen glanced at Jack, who gave a reluctant nod. She lowered her voice. There's a network traffickers, maybe worse. They use cruise ships because they're chaotic, easy to slip through the cracks. I got close to exposing them a year ago, but someone sent me a warning. A photo of my apartment, taken from inside. I backed off. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. You're saying my girls were targeted by... what? A trafficking ring? It's possible, Ellen said. I don't have proof yet, but the suitcase, the lighter, it's too specific. Someone's leaving breadcrumbs. Jack cut in, his voice sharp. Ellen, you're scaring her. We don't know enough yet. I deserve to know, Sarah snapped, her eyes blazing. If there's a chance Emma's still alive, I need everything you've got. Ellen hesitated, then pulled a folded sheet of paper from her notepad. This is a list of crew members fired from the Ocean Majesty in the last 2 years. One name keeps popping up in my research. Victor Hayes. He was a maintenance worker, let go for inappropriate behavior with passengers. No charges filed, but he was on your ship when the girls disappeared. Sarah's breath hitched. Victor Hayes. VH. The lighter. Maybe, Jack said, his jaw tight. It's a stretch, but we'll check him out. Ellen, you need to stay out of this. If you're right about a network, you're painting a target on your back. I can handle myself, Ellen said, but her voice wavered slightly. Sarah stared at the list, the name Victor Hayes burning into her mind. What else do you know about him? Not much, Ellen admitted. He's a ghost, moves around, no fixed address, but I've got a contact in Boston who might know more. I'll dig, but you need to be careful, Sarah. These people don't play games. Sarah nodded, her resolve hardening. I'm not stopping until I find Emma. Jack's phone buzzed, and he stepped outside to take the call. Lena stayed with Sarah, her eyes scanning the list. This Hayes guy, if he's involved, he's bold. Leaving a lighter with his initials? That's either stupid or deliberate. Sarah's stomach twisted. You think he wanted us to find it? Could be, Lena said. Some of these guys, they get off on the chase, like a cat toying with a mouse. Sarah shuddered, the image too vivid. She turned to Ellen. Why didn't you go to the police with this? Ellen's face darkened. I tried. They said I had no evidence, just theories. After the threats, I didn't push. But when I heard about the suitcase, I knew I had to talk to you. Jack returned, his expression grim. Forensics came back on the suitcase. No fingerprints, but they found something else, a scrap of paper tucked inside Molly's t-shirt. It was folded tight, like someone hid it there. Sarah's heart stopped. What did it say? Jack hesitated, then handed her a photo of the evidence. The paper was crumpled, the ink smudged from months in the ocean, but the words were clear. Asterisk, don't trust the magician. Asterisk. Sarah's knees buckled. She sank into the chair, the photo trembling in her hands. The magician, she whispered. They were at a magic show. That's the last place I saw them. Lena's eyes narrowed. You're saying someone posed as a performer to get to them? It makes sense, Ellen said. Those shows are crowded, chaotic. Perfect cover for a snatch. Sarah's mind raced back to the ship. The magician had been a hit with the kids, pulling cards from sleeves, making coins vanish. Molly and Emma had been mesmerized, clapping and laughing. Had he been watching them, waiting for his moment? Her stomach churned at the thought of her girls following a stranger, lured by a trick. We need to pull the ship's performer logs, Jack said, already typing on his phone. See who was working that show. Sarah's voice was steel. I'm going with you to Bangor. If that newsstand connects to this Victor Hayes, I want to be there. Jack shook his head. Sarah, it's too dangerous. Let us handle. No, she cut him off. She's my daughter. I'm not sitting here waiting. Lena exchanged a glance with Jack, then nodded. Fine. But you stay close, and you do what we say. Sarah nodded, her eyes fixed on the photo of the note, asterisk, don't trust the magician, asterisk. The words echoed in her mind, a warning from her daughter, left behind in a suitcase adrift in the sea. She stood, grabbing her jacket. Let's go. The drive to Bangor was tense, the fog thinning but still clinging to the road. Sarah sat in the back of Jack's unmarked cruiser, the list of fired crew members clutched in her hand. Victor Hayes' name stared back at her, a specter she couldn't shake. The memory of the cruise ship haunted her, the bright lights, the laughter, the moment she turned her back. She'd replayed it 1,000 times, each one cutting deeper. If she'd stayed at the table, if she'd ignored that call. Sarah, Jack's voice broke through. We're almost there. You sure you're up for this? I have to be, she said, her voice low but firm. For Emma. Lena turned from the passenger seat. Keller's Corner News is a small place, probably just a newsstand. If Hayes is connected, we'll find something. Sarah nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. The note, the lighter, the suitcase, they were pieces of a puzzle, but the picture was still blurry. Who was Victor Hayes? And why leave a note warning about a magician? Was it Molly's handwriting, or someone else's? The questions gnawed at her, each one a fresh wound. As they pulled into Bangor, the city felt heavy, its streets lined with faded storefronts and empty lots. The newsstand was in a strip mall, a squat structure surrounded by cracked asphalt. Sarah's heart pounded as they parked. This was at the first real step toward answers, or toward more pain. Jack turned to her. Stay behind me. We don't know what we're walking into. Sarah nodded, her eyes fixed on the neon sign flickering above the newsstand, Keller's Corner News. Somewhere inside, there might be a clue to Emma. And Sarah would tear the place apart to find it. The strip mall in Bangor, Maine, was a ghost of its former self, its faded signs and cracked pavement whispering of better days. Keller's Corner News stood at the far end, a squat, grimy kiosk dwarfed by the empty storefronts around it. The neon sign flickered weakly, casting a sickly glow over the parking lot. Sarah Coleman's heart hammered as she stepped out of Detective Jack Harper's cruiser, the cold October air biting at her exposed skin. The fog from Bar Harbor had followed them here, curling around the streetlights like a predator stalking its prey. She clutched the list of fired crew members from the Ocean Majesty, the name Victor Hayes burning in her mind like a brand. Somewhere in this rundown newsstand, there might be a clue to Emma, her surviving daughter, still lost after 10 months. Jack adjusted his jacket, his eyes scanning the lot. Stay close, Sarah, he said, his voice low and taut. We don't know who's watching. Officer Lena Martinez nodded, her hand resting on her holster as she flanked Sarah. This place looks like it's one bad day from shutting down. If Hayes is connected, he's not exactly living large. Sarah's gaze locked on the kiosk's smudged glass door. A bell jingled as they pushed inside, the air heavy with the musty scent of old magazines and stale cigarette smoke. Behind the counter, a lanky man in his 30s, with greasy hair and a bored expression, glanced up from a stack of lottery tickets. His name tag read, Tyler. He barely acknowledged them, his eyes flicking back to his phone. Can I help you? Tyler muttered, not looking up. Jack flashed his badge, the metal glinting under the flickering fluorescent lights. Detective Jack Harper, Portland PD. This is Officer Martinez. We're looking for information on Victor Hayes. He connected to this place? Tyler's shoulders stiffened, but his face stayed blank. Never heard of him, he said, his voice flat as the pavement outside. Sarah stepped forward, her voice sharp with desperation. Don't lie to us. We know this newsstand sold a suitcase like the one my daughter was found in, and a Zippo lighter, with VH engraved on it. Start talking. Tyler's eyes flicked to her, a flicker of unease breaking through his apathy. Look, lady, we sell a lot of stuff. Lighters, magazines, snacks. I don't keep track of every customer. Jack leaned over the counter, his voice low and menacing. You're gonna want to try harder, Tyler. This is a homicide investigation. A kid's body washed up in that suitcase. You really want to play dumb? Tyler swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. Okay. I don't know any Victor Hayes, but the owner, Mr. Keller, he comes in sometimes. Buys and sells all kinds of junk. Maybe he sold a suitcase, I don't know. Sarah's eyes scanned the cramped kiosk, landing on a corner, piled with odds and ends old phone chargers, knockoff sunglasses, and there, half hidden behind a stack of tabloids, a suitcase. It was identical to the one from the beach, faded, blue, square, with a rusty zipper. Her breath caught, her fingers trembling as she pointed. That suitcase. Where did it come from? Tyler followed her gaze, his face paling. That? Mr. Keller brought it in a few weeks ago. Said he got it cheap at a flea market. We sell whatever he brings in. Sarah pulled out her phone, snapping a photo of the suitcase. The price sticker was still attached, the same logo as the one from Molly's suitcase. Asterisk Keller's Corner News, Bangor, Maine. This is no coincidence, she said, her voice shaking with rage. My daughter was found in a suitcase just like that. You're telling me you don't know where it came from? I swear, I just work here, Tyler protested, his hands raised. Mr. Keller's barely around. He's got 3 locations, Bangor, Augusta, and 1 opening in Portland. He's always moving, checking stock or whatever. Jack's eyes narrowed. You got a number for Keller? An address? Tyler hesitated, then rummaged under the counter, producing a crumpled business card. This is all I got. He doesn't like being bothered. Jack took the card, his jaw tight. What about lighters? You sell Zippos here? Tyler nodded, pointing to a small display case near the register. Yeah, right there. Different designs, but same brand as the one you're talking about. Sarah leaned over the case, her heart pounding. The lighters were identical to the one found with Molly, silver, heavy, with space for custom engraving. She pointed to one. Do customers ever get these engraved? Sometimes, Tyler said, shrugging. We don't do it here, but people take them to jewelers or whatever. Jack pulled up a photo of the evidence lighter on his phone, holding it out. This look familiar? Initials VH, found with the suitcase. Tyler squinted at the screen, his brow furrowing. Could be one of ours, but we sell dozens of those. I don't know about any initials. Sarah's patience snapped. You're telling me you sell suitcases and lighters exactly like the ones tied to my daughter's murder, and you've got nothing to say? Where's Keller? I want to talk to him. He's not here, Tyler snapped, his voice rising. I told you, he moves around. Try his house in Brewer, across the river. That's all I know. Jack pocketed the business card, his voice cold. You see, Keller, you don't mention us. Understand, this is bigger than you, Tyler. The bell jingled as they stepped back into the parking lot, the fog thicker now, swallowing the streetlights. Sarah's mind raced, the suitcase and lighter spinning a web of questions. Victor Hayes. Keller's Corner News. The note in Molly's t-shirt asterisk, don't trust the magician. It was all connected, but how? She glanced at Jack, who was already on his radio, requesting a background check on Vincent Keller. We'll drive by Keller's house, Jack said, opening the cruiser door. But we don't have a warrant yet. This is just a look, see? Sarah nodded, her eyes fixed on the photo of the suitcase on her phone. That suitcase, it's too perfect. Whoever did this, they're not hiding, they're taunting us. Lena climbed into the front seat, her expression grim. If Keller's selling stuff tied to a murder, he's either involved or he's got one hell of a supplier. As they pulled out of the lot, Sarah's phone buzzed. It was a text from Ellen Harper, Jack's sister, the reporter who'd been digging into cruise ship disappearances, found something on Hayes. Call me ASAP. Be careful. Asterisk. Sarah's stomach twisted. She showed the text to Jack, who frowned, but kept his eyes on the road. Ellen's gonna get herself killed, he muttered. She's too deep in this. She's helping, Sarah said, her voice fierce. She's the only one who believes this is bigger than just my girls. Jack didn't reply, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. The cruiser wound through Bangor's quiet streets, the fog pressing in like a living thing. Sarah dialed Ellen, her hands trembling. The call went straight to voicemail. Ellen, it's Sarah. We're at the newsstand. Call me back. They drove in silence for a few minutes, the tension thick enough to choke on. Then Lena's head snapped up, her eyes locked on the rearview mirror. Jack, we've got a tail. Black pickup, 2 cars back. Been with us since the strip mall. Sarah turned, her heart racing, but the fog made it hard to see. You sure? Positive, Lena said, her hand moving to her radio. Unmarked black pickup, no plates visible, requesting backup to our location. Jack's jaw tightened as he accelerated, weaving through the sparse traffic. Hold on, he said, his voice clipped. The cruiser's engine roared as he took a sharp turn onto a side street, the tires screeching. Sarah gripped the door, her eyes darting to the side mirror. The pickup followed, its headlights cutting through the fog like knives. Who the hell is that? Sarah whispered, fear clawing at her chest. No idea, Jack said, his voice steady but strained. But they're not friendly. He floored the gas, the cruiser hurtling through a residential neighborhood. The pickup kept pace, its engine growling like a beast. Lena radioed again, her voice urgent. Backup needed now, Brewer area, pursuing a black pickup, possible suspect. Sarah's phone buzzed again, another text from Ellen. Hayes was on your ship, fired for creeping on kids. Check his old crew badge, photo might match the magician. Asterisk. Sarah's breath hitched. The magician. The note. It was him. Victor Hayes had been there, watching her girls, waiting for his moment. Jack, Ellen says Hayes was the magician, Sarah said, her voice trembling. He was on the ship. Jack's eyes flicked to her, then back to the road. We'll deal with that in a minute. First, we lose this guy. He swerved onto a narrow road, the pickup gaining ground. The fog was a curse now, hiding their pursuer's face but not their intent. Sarah's heart pounded as she pictured Emma, alone, scared, somewhere out there. Was this Hayes? Was he coming for her now? The road curved sharply, and Jack took it hard, the cruiser fishtailing. The pickup missed the turn, its headlights veering into the darkness. For a moment, Sarah thought they'd lost it. Then a loud thunk echoed from the road behind them. Jack slammed on the brakes, the cruiser skidding to a stop. Stay here, he barked, drawing his weapon. Lena was already out, her gun raised as she scanned the fog. Sarah ignored Jack's order, climbing out of the cruiser. Sarah, get back. Jack hissed, but she was already moving toward the sound. In the middle of the road, glinting under a flickering streetlight, was another Zippo lighter. Sarah's blood ran cold. She crouched, her hand shaking as she picked it up. The initials VH stared back at her, mocking her. He's here, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. Jack grabbed her arm, pulling her back. Sarah, this is a setup. We need to move. Lena swept the area, her flashlight cutting through the fog. No sign of the pickup, she said, her voice tense. But this lighter didn't fall out of nowhere. Sarah's phone buzzed again, the screen lighting up with a new text. No name, no number, just a string of words that made her heart stop. 1 Emma, Route 1A. Come alone, asterisk. She showed it to Jack, her hands trembling so badly she nearly dropped the phone. Sarah, no, Jack said, his voice hard. This is a trap. You know it is. He has Emma, Sarah said, her voice breaking. I can't wait, Jack. I can't lose her too. Lena stepped closer, her eyes on the lighter in Sarah's hand. This guy's playing games. Leaving lighters, sending texts he wants you to chase him. I don't care, Sarah said, her voice fierce. If there's a chance Emma's at Route 1A, I'm going. Jack's face was a storm of conflict, but he nodded. Fine. But we do this my way. Backup's on the way, and you're not going anywhere alone. Sarah clutched the lighter, its cold metal biting into her palm. The fog swirled around them, hiding whatever waited on Route 1A. She didn't care if it was a trap. She didn't care if it was dangerous. Emma was out there, and Sarah would walk through hell to find her. The fog clung to the road like a shroud as Sarah Coleman slipped out of the Seaside Haven Resort, her heart pounding in her chest. The October night was frigid, the air heavy with the scent of salt and decay. She'd waited until the cabin was quiet, until Officer Lena Martinez had dozed off in the chair by the door, her soft snores barely audible over the distant crash of waves. Sarah knew Jack Harper would be furious, but the text on her phone burned in her mind. Want Emma? Route 1A. Come alone. Asterisk. She couldn't wait for backup, couldn't sit still while Emma was out there, scared, alone, maybe hurt. She pulled her jacket tight, the Zippo lighter with V.H. etched on it heavy in her pocket, and crept into the darkness. Route 1A was a desolate stretch of highway, cutting through the outskirts of Bangor, Maine, lined with skeletal pines and abandoned lots. The address from the text led to an old warehouse, its rusted metal walls looming like a forgotten beast in the fog. The windows were shattered, jagged glass, catching the faint glow of a flickering streetlight. The air was thick with the smell of oil and rot, and the distant drip of water echoed like a heartbeat. Sarah's boots crunched on gravel as she approached, her breath shallow, every nerve screaming to turn back. But Emma's face, her wide blue eyes, her gap-toothed smile pushed her forward. She gripped her flashlight, its beam slicing through the mist, and slipped through a gap in the chain-link fence. Inside, the warehouse was a cavern of shadows, the air cold and stagnant. Rusted machinery loomed like ghosts, their outlines barely visible in the dim light. Sarah's flashlight swept across the floor, catching piles of debris, broken crates, tangled wires, and a scattering of old newspapers. Her heart thudded as she moved deeper, the drip of water growing louder, more insistent. Then she saw at a wall covered in photographs, pinned haphazardly to a rotting corkboard. Her breath caught as she stepped closer, the beam of her flashlight trembling. The photos were of children, dozens of them, their faces frozen in fear or confusion. And there, in the center, were Molly and Emma, their blonde ponytails unmistakable, their eyes wide as they stared into the camera. Sarah's knees buckled, a sob tearing from her throat. Emma, she whispered, her fingers brushing the photo. It was recent. Emma's hair was shorter, her face thinner, but it was her. She was alive, or had been when this was taken. Next to the photos was a notebook, its pages yellowed and curling. Sarah grabbed it, flipping it open with shaking hands. The handwriting was meticulous, a chilling catalog of dates, locations, and names. Key West, August, 2 girls, blonde, twins. Molly disposed, Emma kept. Asterisk. Her stomach churned as she read on, the words blurring through tears. Boston, June, 1 boy, brown hair. Charleston, March, 2 girls, sisters, asterisk. The list went on, a litany of stolen children, each entry more horrifying than the last. A creak echoed behind her, sharp and sudden. Sarah spun, her flashlight sweeping the darkness. "Who's there?" she called, her voice trembling but defiant. No answer, just the drip of water and the rustle of wind through broken windows. She shoved the notebook into her jacket, her heart racing. She wasn't alone. "Sarah?" a voice whispered, soft and urgent. Sarah froze, her flashlight landing on a figure crouched behind a rusted machine. It was a woman, her dark hair matted, her clothes torn. She looked about 30, her eyes wide with fear. "Don't scream," the woman said, raising her hands. "I'm not here to hurt you." "Who are you?" Sarah demanded, her voice sharp. She gripped the flashlight like a weapon, ready to swing. Maria Torres, the woman said, her voice barely above a whisper. I used to work on the Ocean Majesty. I know what happened to your girls. Sarah's breath hitched. You know Emma? Where is she? Maria glanced nervously at the shadows. Not here. It's not safe. Victor Hayes, he's not working alone. There's someone else, someone higher up. They control everything. Sarah's mind reeled. Victor Hayes? The magician? Maria nodded, her eyes darting to the door. He was maintenance, but he posed as a performer to get close to kids. He'd watch them, learn their habits. That day at the pool, he saw your girls alone. He used a card trick to lure them to a crew hallway, away from the cameras. Sarah's hands clenched into fists, rage boiling in her chest. Where's Emma now? Tell me. I don't know, Maria said, her voice breaking. I left the ship after I saw what he was doing. I tried to tell the captain, but no one listened. Then I got a threat, a photo of my sister's house, with a note saying I'd be next. I ran. I've been hiding ever since. Sarah's eyes narrowed. Why are you here then? I heard about the suitcase, Maria said. I knew it was Victor. I came to find proof, something to stop him. That notebook, it's his. He keeps track of everything. A loud crash echoed from the far end of the warehouse, metal screeching against concrete. Sarah's heart leapt into her throat. Maria grabbed her arm, pulling her behind a stack of crates. Quiet, she hissed. He's here. Sarah's pulse thundered as footsteps echoed, slow and deliberate, growing closer. Her flashlight flickered, the beam weakening as the batteries faltered. She clicked it off, plunging them into darkness. The footsteps stopped, replaced by a low, guttural chuckle. I know you're here, a man's voice called, cold and taunting. You shouldn't have come, Sarah. Sarah's blood ran cold. It was him, Victor Hayes. She clutched the notebook tighter, her mind racing. She had to get out, had to get the notebook to Jack. But Emma, could she be here? She whispered to Maria, Is Emma in this place? I don't know. Maria whispered back, her voice trembling. He moves them. This is just a drop point. The footsteps started again, closer now, crunching on glass. Sarah's eyes darted to the exit, a faint rectangle of gray in the distance. She grabbed Maria's hand, whispering, We run on 3. Ready? Maria nodded, her face pale. Sarah counted under her breath. 1, 2, 3. They bolted, weaving through the maze of crates, their boots pounding the concrete. A shadow lunged from the darkness, a tall figure in a hooded jacket, his face obscured. Sarah screamed, shoving Maria toward the exit. The man grabbed for her, his fingers grazing her jacket, but she ducked, sprinting for the door. Outside, the fog was thicker, swallowing the world in gray. Sarah's lungs burned as she ran, Maria stumbling behind her. The chain-link fence loomed ahead, but before they could reach it, a hand clamped onto Maria's arm, yanking her back. She screamed, thrashing, as the man dragged her into the shadows. Sarah spun, her flashlight falling to the ground, its beams spinning wildly. Maria, she shouted, but the fog muffled her voice. Headlights cut through the mist, blinding her. A truck roared up, its tires screeching as it skidded to a stop. The driver's door flew open, and Tom Brennan, the fisherman from Bar Harbor, leapt out, his face grim. Sarah, get in, he yelled, waving her toward the truck. Sarah hesitated, her eyes on the warehouse, where Maria had vanished. He's got her, she cried. We can't leave. You can't help her if you're dead, Tom snapped, grabbing her arm and pulling her toward the truck. Move. Sarah scrambled into the passenger seat, her heart pounding as Tom floored the gas. The truck lurched forward, gravel spraying as they tore down Route 1A. Sarah clutched the notebook, her hands shaking. How did you know I was here? She demanded. Saw you sneak out of the resort, Tom said, his eyes fixed on the road. Knew you were up to something stupid. I followed you. Sarah's mind raced. Maria's words echoed Victor wasn't alone. Someone higher up. And the notebook, with its list of stolen children, was proof of something far bigger than one man. She flipped it open, scanning the pages in the dim light of the dashboard. One name caught her eye, written in the same meticulous handwriting. Carl Whitaker, Bar Harbor, contact for delivery, asterisk. Her blood ran cold. Carl Whitaker, the owner of the Seaside Haven Resort, the genial man who'd offered her a cabin with a sympathetic smile. The former private investigator who'd seemed so kind. Tom, Sarah said, her voice trembling. Do you know Carl Whitaker? Tom's hands tightened on the wheel. Everyone in Bar Harbor knows Carl. Runs the resort. Used to be a PI. Why? Sarah showed him the notebook, pointing to the name. He's in here, connected to Victor Hayes. Tom's face darkened, but he didn't reply. The truck sped through the fog, the warehouse fading into the distance. Sarah's phone buzzed, and she fumbled to check it. Another text, from the same unknown number. You took something that belongs to me. Give it back, or Emma pays. Asterisk. Her stomach twisted. Victor knew she had the notebook, and he knew where to find her. They pulled into a gas station on the edge of Bangor, the neon lights casting an eerie glow through the fog. Tom cut the engine, his face grim. You need to call Harper, he said. This is way above our pay grade. Sarah nodded, her fingers shaking as she dialed Jack's number. He answered on the first ring, his voice sharp with worry. Sarah, where the hell are you? Lena said you slipped out. I'm on Route 1A, Sarah said, her voice breaking. I went to the warehouse. Jack, I found photos of Emma, she's alive. And a notebook, with names, dates, Carl Whitaker's in it. Whitaker? Jack's voice was incredulous. The resort guy? Yes, Sarah said. And Victor Hayes was here. He grabbed Maria Torres, she used to work on the ship. She knew about him, Jack. We have to go back for her. You're not going anywhere, Jack snapped. Stay put. I'm sending Lena to you now. And Sarah, don't do anything else stupid. Sarah hung up, her eyes on the notebook. The pages were a map of horror, each entry a child stolen, a family broken. And Carl Whitaker's name tied it all together. She looked at Tom, who was staring out the windshield, his jaw tight. You knew Carl was a PI, she said. Did you know he investigated missing kids? Tom nodded slowly. Heard stories. Carl worked cases like yours years ago, but he quit after his wife died. Said it broke him. Never heard nothing bad about him, though. Sarah's mind raced. Carl had been so kind, offering her a place to stay, his eyes full of pity, but the notebook didn't lie. Was he part of this? Or was he another victim, like Maria? She opened the notebook again, scanning the pages. Tucked between two entries was a folded piece of paper, smaller than the rest. She unfolded it, her heart stopping as she read the words, asterisk, don't let the second one live, asterisk. It was in the same handwriting as the notebook, but the ink was fresher, the paper less worn. A chill ran through her. Tom, she whispered, showing him the note. This is about Emma. Tom's face paled. Jesus, Sarah. We need to get this to Harper. Before she could reply, her phone buzzed again. Another text. You're out of time. Bar Harbor? Midnight. Bring the notebook. Sarah's blood ran cold. She looked at Tom, her voice trembling. He's calling me back to Bar Harbor. He's got Emma. Tom's hands gripped the wheel, his knuckles white. You're not going alone. I'm taking you to Harper. Sarah nodded, but her mind was already racing ahead. Carl Whitaker, Victor Hayes, the warehouse, the notebook. The pieces were falling together, but the picture was still blurry. And Emma, her little girl, was at the center of it all. She clutched the notebook, its weight a promise and a curse. Whatever waited in Bar Harbor, she'd face it, for Emma. The fog over Bar Harbor was thicker than ever, a suffocating veil that turned the coastal town into a maze of shadows. The night was alive with the howl of wind and the relentless crash of waves against the rocky shore. Sarah Coleman gripped the notebook tightly, its pages heavy with the names of stolen children, as she sat in the back of Detective Jack Harper's cruiser. The engine hummed as they sped toward the Seaside Haven Resort, where Carl Whitaker, the genial owner and former private investigator, waited. His name in Victor Hayes' notebook had shattered Sarah's trust, turning his kind smile into a mask hiding something sinister. Officer Lena Martinez sat in the passenger seat, her hand resting on her holster, her eyes scanning the fog for threats. The text Sarah had received, Bar Harbor, midnight. Bring the notebook, burned in her mind, a taunt from Victor Hayes, the man who'd taken her daughters. We're walking into a trap, Jack said, his voice low and grim as he navigated the winding coastal road. Whitaker's involved, but we don't know how deep. Stay sharp, Sarah. I don't care if it's a trap, Sarah said, her voice trembling with resolve. Emma's out there. I'm getting her back. Lena turned, her dark eyes steady. We've got backup on the way, but if Whitaker's working with Hayes, he's dangerous. Don't do anything reckless. Sarah nodded, but her mind was elsewhere, replaying the horrors of the warehouse, Maria Torres' scream as she was dragged into the shadows, the photos of terrified children, the note in Victor's handwriting. Asterisk. Don't let the second one live. Asterisk. Emma was still alive. She had to be. The thought was a lifeline, pulling her through the grief of losing Molly. She clutched the notebook tighter, its pages a map to her daughter's survival. They pulled into the resort's gravel lot, the cabins dark except for a single light glowing in the main office. The neon sign flickered, casting an eerie glow over the fog-shrouded pines. Sarah's heart pounded as they stepped out, the cold biting at her face. Jack motioned for her to stay behind him, his gun drawn but low. Lena flanked her, her flashlight cutting through the mist. The air was heavy with salt and tension, every rustle of leaves a potential threat. Whitaker's in there, Jack said, nodding toward the office. We'll start with him. Lena, cover the exits. Lena nodded, slipping into the shadows as Jack and Sarah approached the office. The door creaked as they entered, the bell jingling like a warning. Carl Whitaker stood behind the counter, his gray hair neatly combed, his smile warm but strained. Mrs. Coleman, he said, his voice too calm. Detective Harper, didn't expect you back so soon. Sarah's eyes narrowed, her hand clutching the notebook. Cut the act, Carl. Your name's in here, she said, holding up the notebook. You're connected to Victor Hayes. Where's my daughter? Carl's smile faltered, his hands pausing on a stack of papers. I don't know what you're talking about, he said, but his voice wavered, betraying him. Jack stepped forward, his gun still lowered but ready. We found your name in a ledger of kidnapped kids, Whitaker. You were a PI. You knew how to cover tracks, start talking, or we do this the hard way. Carl's eyes darted to the door, then back to Sarah. You don't understand, he said, his voice low. I tried to stop them. Years ago, I investigated cases like yours, missing kids, cruise ships. I got too close, and they came for my family. My wife, she didn't die in an accident. They made it look that way. Sarah's stomach twisted. Who's they? Victor Hayes? Carl nodded, his face pale. And others. It's bigger than you think. I backed off to protect my kids, but I kept evidence, just in case. He reached under the counter, moving slowly as Jack tensed. Easy, detective. It's just a drive. He pulled out a USB stick, its black casing glinting under the fluorescent lights. This has footage from the Ocean Majesty, security tapes they thought were erased. Sarah's heart raced. Show me. Carl plugged the USB into an old laptop behind the counter, his hands shaking. The screen flickered to life, showing grainy footage of the ship's pool deck. Sarah's breath caught as she saw Molly and Emma, their blonde ponytails bouncing as they clapped at a magic show. The performer, a tall man in a sparkly cape, pulled cards from thin air, his smile wide and predatory. Sarah's blood ran cold. That's him, she whispered, Victor Hayes. The footage shifted, showing the girls following the man toward a crew hallway, their faces lit with excitement. Then another figure appeared, a woman, young, with dark hair, dressed as a waitress. She handed the girls cups of juice, her smile too perfect. The girls drank, their movements slowing, their eyes glassy. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. She drugged them, she said, her voice shaking with rage. That's Laura Mitchell, Carl said, his voice heavy. Victor's wife. She worked the dining staff, slipped sedatives into their drinks. They planned it together. Sarah's vision blurred with tears, but rage kept her steady. Where are they now? Where's Emma? Carl hesitated, his eyes flicking to the window. Laura's in Bar Harbor. She's got a car, a gray sedan with a plate starting VHK. She's heading for the ferry to Nova Scotia. Victor's with her and Emma. Sarah's heart stopped. The ferry? When? Midnight, Carl said. You've got less than an hour. Jack grabbed his radio, his voice sharp. Lena, get to the ferry terminal. Gray sedan, plate VHK. Suspects Victor Hayes and Laura Mitchell, possible hostage, 8-year-old girl. Move now. Sarah was already moving, her boots pounding the floor as she headed for the door. Sarah, wait. Jack called, but she didn't stop. Emma was close, so close, she wouldn't lose her again. The Bar Harbor ferry terminal was a chaos of fog and flashing lights, the midnight air thick with the roar of waves and the hum of idling engines. Sarah's heart pounded as Jack's cruiser screeched into the lot, joining a line of police vehicles cordoning off the area. Officers swarmed the terminal, their radios crackling with urgent commands. Lena was already there, her flashlight sweeping the line of cars waiting to board the ferry. Sarah's eyes locked on a gray sedan near the front, its license plate glinting, VHK. Her breath caught as she saw a small figure in the back seat, clutching a familiar object, a tattered bunny plush, the one Emma had slept with every night since she was 3. That's her, Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. That's Emma. Jack grabbed her arm, his grip firm. Stay here, Sarah. We'll handle this. No, she said, pulling free. She needs me. Before Jack could argue, Lena's voice crackled over the radio. Target vehicle confirmed. Adult male, adult female, and a child in the back, requesting approach. Jack nodded to Lena, who signaled the ferry officer to pull the sedan aside for a random check. Sarah's heart thundered as the car eased out of line, parking under a harsh spotlight. The driver's window rolled down, revealing a woman in her 30s with dark hair and a tight smile. Laura Mitchell. In the back, Emma squirmed, her face pale and frightened, her arms wrapped around the bunny. Sarah's knees buckled, but she forced herself to stand, her eyes locked on her daughter. The passenger door opened, and a man stepped out tall, lean, with cold eyes and a scar above his brow. Victor Hayes. He scanned the crowd, his gaze landing on Sarah. A smirk curled his lips, chilling her to the bone. Jack, that's him, she said, her voice trembling with rage. Stay back, Jack ordered, drawing his gun. He approached the sedan, his voice booming. Victor Hayes, Laura Mitchell, step out of the vehicle with your hands up. Laura's smile vanished, her hands gripping the wheel. Victor's smirk widened as he reached into his jacket, pulling out a knife that glinted under the spotlight. Easy, detective, he said, his voice smooth and taunting. You don't want to scare the kid. Sarah's heart stopped as Victor opened the back door, grabbing Emma's arm. The girl cried out, clutching her bunny as he pulled her from the car. Mom, she screamed, her voice piercing the fog. Emma, Sarah shouted, lunging forward, but Jack caught her, his arm like iron. Let me go, she cried, thrashing against him. Sarah, you'll get her killed, Jack hissed, his eyes on Victor. Hayes, let the girl go, this is over. Victor laughed, a cold, guttural sound. Over? You have no idea what you're up against. He tightened his grip on Emma, the knife hovering near her throat. Sarah's vision blurred with tears, her heart screaming. Lena circled behind the sedan, her gun raised. Drop the knife, Hayes, she said, her voice steady. You're surrounded. Laura stepped out of the car, her hands raised, but her eyes darting nervously. Victor, stop, she said, her voice trembling. They've got us. Shut up, Victor snapped, his eyes locked on Sarah. You brought the notebook, didn't you? Hand it over, and maybe the kid lives. Sarah's hand tightened on the notebook in her jacket. Let her go first, she said, her voice shaking but defiant. Victor's smirk faded, his eyes narrowing. You don't make the rules, Sarah. Before she could reply, a commotion erupted at the edge of the lot. A figure sprinted from the fog. Tom Brennan, the fisherman, his face grim as he barreled toward Victor. Let her go, he shouted, tackling Victor to the ground. The knife flew from Victor's hand, skittering across the asphalt. Emma broke free, running towards Sarah with a sob. Sarah dropped to her knees, catching Emma in her arms. "Oh, baby," she cried, holding her daughter tightly, feeling her tremble. Emma's face was gaunt, her skin unnaturally tanned, her hair cropped short, but it was her, alive, real. Sarah buried her face in Emma's hair, tears streaming down her cheeks. Jack and Lena moved in, cuffing Victor as he writhed on the ground, cursing. Laura stood frozen, her hands still raised, her face pale. "I didn't want this," she whispered, her voice breaking. "It wasn't supposed to go this far." "Save it," Lena snapped, securing her in cuffs. "You're both done." Sarah held Emma, rocking her gently, her eyes scanning the girl for injuries. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" she whispered, her voice choking. Emma nodded, her voice small. "I was so scared, Mom. They said they'd hurt you if I didn't do what they wanted." "You're safe now," Sarah said, stroking her hair. "They can't hurt you anymore." Jack approached, his face a mix of relief and concern. "We've got them, Sarah. But we need to get Emma to a hospital, and we need that notebook." Sarah handed him the notebook, her hands still trembling. "There's more," she said, her voice low. "Laura said something in the car about someone else, someone higher up." Jack's eyes darkened. "What did she say?" Before Sarah could answer, Lena called from the sedan, her voice urgent. "Jack, you need to see this." She held up a duffel bag from the trunk, its contents spilling onto the ground, another suitcase, identical to the one that held Molly's body, and a plastic case containing syringes and vials of clear liquid. Sarah's stomach churned. They were going to drug her again, she whispered, holding Emma tighter. Lena nodded, her face grim. "And there's more. Photos, like the ones in the warehouse. Kids, dozens of them." Jack's jaw tightened. "Get CSI here now. We're tearing this car apart." As the officers secured the scene, Sarah's eyes fell on Emma's bunny, clutched tightly in her daughter's arms. Sewn into its ear was a tiny tag, one Sarah hadn't noticed before, a logo for Keller's Corner News. Her blood ran cold. "Jack," she said, pointing to the tag. "It's from the newsstand. They marked her." Jack's face hardened. "This goes deeper than we thought. Hayes and Mitchell aren't the end of it." Laura, now in the back of a cruiser, looked at Sarah through the window, her eyes hollow. "You don't know what you're up against," she said, her voice muffled but clear. "They'll come for you. They always do." Sarah's heart pounded, but she forced herself to focus on Emma, who was shivering in her arms. "We need to get her to a doctor," she said, her voice firm. "Ambulance is on the way," Jack said, his hand on her shoulder. "You did good, Sarah. You got her back." Sarah nodded, but Laura's words echoed in her mind. "They'll come for you." Who were they? The notebook, the photos, the drugs. It was a network, a machine of cruelty that had stolen her daughters and countless others. As the ambulance's siren wailed in the distance, Sarah held Emma close, her resolve hardening. She'd saved her daughter, but the fight wasn't over. Not yet. The hospital in Portland, Maine, was a sterile haven of beeping monitors and hushed voices, its corridors bathed in the pale light of early morning. Sarah Coleman sat beside her daughter Emma's bed, her hand gently holding the 8-year-old girl's small, frail one. The room was quiet, save for the soft hum of the IV drip, feeding nutrients into Emma's body. Dawn crept through the thin curtains, casting long shadows that softened as the sun climbed higher. Emma slept, her face less pale than the night before, but the dark circles under her eyes and the unnatural thinness of her cheeks were stark reminders of the 10 months she'd endured. Sarah's heart ached, a mix of relief and grief that Emma was alive, grief for Molly, whose body had washed up in that cursed suitcase, and for the innocence stolen from her surviving daughter. The events of the past 24 hours played in Sarah's mind like a relentless film reel. The ferry terminal in Bar Harbor, Victor Hayes' cold smirk, Laura Mitchell's chilling warning, "They'll come for you." Emma's rescue had been a miracle, but the notebook, the photos, and the drugs found in Laura's car painted a picture of a horror far larger than one couple's cruelty. Sarah's eyes drifted to the bunny plush on the bedside table, its tattered ear bearing the logo of Keller's Corner News. That tag was a taunt, a reminder that the network that had taken her daughters was still out there, its tendrils reaching deeper than she'd imagined. A soft knock at the door pulled Sarah from her thoughts. Dr. Rachel Nguyen, a pediatrician with kind eyes and a calm demeanor, entered, followed by a nurse carrying a clipboard. "Good morning, Mrs. Coleman," Dr. Nguyen said, her voice low to avoid waking Emma. "How's she doing?" "Restless," Sarah said, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. "She had nightmares, kept mumbling about cameras and bright lights." Dr. Nguyen nodded, checking Emma's chart. "That's expected after what she's been through. Physically, she's malnourished and dehydrated, but we're addressing that with the IV. Her vitals are improving, but the psychological trauma, that'll take time." Sarah's throat tightened. What did they do to her? She won't talk about it. Dr. Nguyen's expression grew grave. "Based on her initial exam, Emma has signs of prolonged restraint marks on her wrists and ankles, likely from zip ties. There are bruises on her back, consistent with being struck with a thin object, maybe a belt. She's also highly sensitive to bright lights, which suggests she was photographed repeatedly, possibly in a controlled setting." Sarah's hands clenched, rage simmering beneath her grief. "Photographed? You mean, for those pictures we found?" "It's likely," Dr. Nguyen said, her voice gentle but firm. "She mentioned standing still and flashes during the exam. We've notified a child psychologist to start working with her when she's ready." Sarah nodded, her eyes on Emma's sleeping face. "What's the plan?" "We'll keep her here for a few days," Dr. Nguyen said. "We need to stabilize her physically and start a nutritional regimen. After that, she'll need ongoing therapy, both individual and family-based. She's strong, Mrs. Coleman, but she'll need you to be strong too." "I will be," Sarah said, her voice fierce. "Whatever she needs, I'll make it happen." Dr. Nguyen squeezed her shoulder. "You're doing everything right. I'll check back later." As she left, Officer Lena Martinez appeared in the doorway, her uniform rumpled from a long night, her eyes heavy but alert. "Morning, Sarah," Lena said, stepping inside. "Detective Harper's on his way with an update." "You okay?" "No," Sarah said, managing a weak smile. "But Emma's alive, that's something." Lena nodded, her gaze softening as she looked at Emma. "She's a fighter, like her mom. I've never seen a case like this, Sarah. You're one tough woman to get her back." Sarah's smile faded. "If I was tough, I wouldn't have lost them in the first place." "Don't do that," Lena said, her voice firm. "You fought like hell for 10 months. Most people would have given up. You didn't." Sarah didn't reply, her eyes drifting back to Emma. The guilt was a constant weight, but Lena was right about one thing. She hadn't given up. And she wouldn't now, not when the people behind this were still out there. Jack Harper arrived 20 minutes later, his coat damp from the morning drizzle, his face etched with exhaustion. He carried a manila folder, its edges worn from handling. "How's she doing?" he asked, nodding toward Emma. "She'll make it," Sarah said, her voice steady. "Physically at least. What's the update?" Jack glanced at Lena, then pulled a chair close to Sarah's. "Victor Hayes and Laura Mitchell are in custody, but it's not over. Laura's talking, trying to cut a deal. She says they were part of a network trafficking kids for illegal materials, photos, videos, worse." Sarah's stomach churned, her hands tightening around Emma's. "How many kids?" "At least a dozen," Jack said, his voice grim. "Laura gave us a location, a house on Cedar Island, off the coast. We raided it at dawn, found 3 more kids, all under 12. They're in medical care now, but it's rough. Some have been missing for years." Sarah's heart broke, but a flicker of satisfaction burned through her grief. "Good. What about Hayes?" "He's not talking," Jack said. "But Laura's confession is enough to put him away for life. She says he targeted your girls, specifically saw them in Portland before the cruise, thought twins would sell well. He posed as a magician to gain their trust, used a stolen crew uniform to move around the ship. Sarah closed her eyes, the image of Molly and Emma following a smiling man with card tricks searing her mind. And Molly? Why her? Jack hesitated, his voice lowering. Laura wasn't there for that part, but Victor told her later. He planned to keep both girls, but his contact someone higher up said twins were too risky, too recognizable. So, he suffocated Molly, wrapped her in her clothes, and dumped her in the suitcase. He threw it overboard from a maintenance deck, thinking it'd sink. Sarah pressed a hand to her mouth, fighting back a sob. And Emma? He kept her hidden in his cabin until they docked in Key West, Jack said. Drugged her, used fake documents to get her off the ship. They moved her between safe houses, changing her appearance to avoid detection. Sarah's eyes flicked to Emma's short, uneven hair, her tan skin. Why the lighter? The one with VH? Laura says it was hers, Jack said. She used it to light cigarettes, left it with Molly's things by mistake when Victor was rushing to dispose of the body. The initials were a coincidence. Her maiden name was Vaughn. Sarah shook her head, rage boiling over. A coincidence? My daughter's dead because of their sloppiness? It's more than that, Jack said. The notebook, the photos, the bunny tag, their markers. This network brands their product. It's how they track what's theirs. Sarah's blood ran cold. We have to destroy those photos. Emma doesn't deserve to have that out there forever. We're working on it, Jack said. The feds are involved now. This is international. We're tracing the network's buyers, shutting down their servers. It's a start. Before Sarah could reply, Emma stirred, her eyes fluttering open. Mom? She whispered, her voice small and frightened. I'm here, sweetheart, Sarah said, leaning close. You're safe. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Molly's gone, isn't she? Sarah's heart shattered, but she took a deep breath, squeezing Emma's hand. Yes, baby, Molly's gone, but you're here, and I'm never letting you go again. Emma sobbed, curling into Sarah's arms. They made me stand still for pictures. If I cried, they hit me. They said they'd hurt you if I told anyone. You were so brave, Sarah said, her voice choking. You don't have to be scared anymore. They're in jail now. Emma nodded, her sobs quieting as exhaustion pulled her back to sleep. Sarah held her, her resolve hardening. She looked at Jack. What happens next? We'll need statements from you and Emma when she's ready, Jack said. But her recovery comes first. The feds are taking over the network investigation. We'll keep you updated. Sarah nodded, her eyes on Emma's sleeping face. A small scar near her hairline caught her attention, a faint line hidden under her bangs. It was new, a mark of the hell she'd endured. Sarah smoothed her daughter's hair, a fierce determination settling in her chest. They'd heal, somehow. They'd build a new life, one that honored Molly's memory. As Jack and Lena left to coordinate with the federal team, Sarah's phone buzzed on the bedside table. She frowned, picking it up. A new text, from an unknown number. You think you've won? We're still watching. Asterisk. Her blood ran cold, her eyes darting to the window, where the morning light seemed suddenly dimmer. She deleted the text, her hand shaking, but the words lingered, a shadow she couldn't shake. Later that day, Ellen Harper, Jack's sister, slipped into the room, her face pale, and her eyes haunted. She carried a laptop bag, its strap frayed from overuse. Sarah, she said, her voice low. I found something, but I can't stay long. Sarah's heart raced. What is it? Ellen glanced at the door, then opened her laptop, pulling up an encrypted file. Before I went off-grid, I hacked into a dark web server tied to the network. This is a partial list of their clients, buyers, distributors. One name stood out, a CEO of a cruise line, based in Boston. I can't prove it yet, but he's connected. Sarah's stomach twisted. The cruise line? They knew? Maybe, Ellen said. I sent the file to the feds, but I'm being watched. I'm leaving tonight. She handed Sarah a note, scribbled on a scrap of paper. If anything happens to me, give this to Jack, and don't trust anyone tied to the Ocean Majesty. Before Sarah could reply, Ellen was gone, slipping out as quietly as she'd come. Sarah stared at the note, her mind reeling. A CEO. A network that reached into the heart of the cruise industry. It was bigger than she'd imagined, a machine of greed and cruelty that had stolen her daughters and countless others. That evening, Sarah stood by Emma's bed, watching her daughter sleep. A nurse had brought a tray of bland hospital food, but Emma hadn't touched it, too exhausted to eat. Sarah's own exhaustion was bone deep, but she couldn't rest, not with Ellen's warning and that chilling text echoing in her mind. She'd organized a small memorial for Molly, to be held once Emma was stronger, but the thought of saying goodbye felt like a fresh wound. Instead, she focused on the future therapy, a new home, a life where Emma could feel safe again. Dr. Rachel Nguyen returned, this time with a notepad, her expression serious. Mrs. Coleman, I've consulted with a colleague, a criminal psychologist who specializes in trafficking cases. She asked me to share some insights with you. Sarah nodded, bracing herself. Go ahead. These networks thrive on chaos, Dr. Nguyen said. Cruise ships are perfect targets, crowded, transient, with lax oversight in international waters. Predators like Victor Hayes exploit trust, using roles like entertainers or staff to blend in. Parents need to be vigilant, even in seemingly safe places. Sarah's chest tightened. What can we do to stop this? Education is key, Dr. Nguyen said. Teach kids to recognize red flags, strangers offering gifts, asking them to keep secrets. Use technology like GPS trackers or apps that alert you if your child moves out of a set area. And push for stricter regulations on cruise lines, background checks, better cameras, real accountability. Sarah nodded, her resolve hardening. I'll do whatever it takes to keep Emma safe, and to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. Dr. Nguyen's expression softened. You're already doing that, by surviving, by fighting. Emma's lucky to have you. As the doctor left, Sarah sat back down, her eyes on Emma's sleeping face. The road ahead would be long therapy, nightmares, the shadow of Molly's loss. But for the first time in 10 months, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. They'd rebuild, piece by piece, a life where Emma could smile again. Outside, the morning sun climbed higher, its light warm and steady. But as Sarah reached for her phone to check the time, it buzzed with another text. This isn't over, Sarah. We know where you live. Asterisk. Her heart stopped, her eyes darting to the window, where the world beyond seemed suddenly darker. She deleted the text, her hands trembling, but the fear lingered, a reminder that the network was still out there, watching, waiting. She kissed Emma's forehead, whispering, We'll be okay, sweetheart. I'll make sure of it. Sarah stood, her jaw set, her eyes burning with determination. She'd saved Emma, but the fight was far from over. Whoever was out there, whatever they planned, she'd be ready. For Molly, for Emma, for every child they'd stolen, she wouldn't stop until the last shadow was gone.